Hello class 6 pupils, welcome to our today's social studies lesson. And our lesson today, we are starting a new topic, and our topic is resources and economic activities. This is the third topic, the fourth topic, because the first topic is physical environment, then social relations, then people and population. So this is the fourth topic, resources and economic activities. It is one of the largest topics in class 6. And we are going to be discussing some of the economic activities which are practiced within the Eastern African countries. And the first economic activity we are going to start with is agriculture. So our first subtopic, pupils, we are going to be discussing agriculture. First of all, you have to understand the meaning of agriculture. What is agriculture? Agriculture is the growing of crops. So it involves both crops, it involves growing of crops and keeping of animals. Growing of crops and domesticating animals is what we call agriculture. Agriculture is the growing of crops and the keeping of animals. So we will be discussing some crop farming within Eastern Africa, and also we'll be discussing keeping of animals. So without wasting time, let us go ahead and look at what we are supposed to be learning today. So starting with catch crop farming, we are going to start with catch crop farming in Eastern Africa. Under class 6, there are 6 crops that we are going to be discussing with you. And sorry, the first crop is tea. So we'll be discussing tea in Kenya. Then we'll also discuss coffee farming in Kenya and in Ethiopia. We'll also discuss sisal farming in Kenya and Tanzania. We'll also discuss sugarcane farming in Kenya and Sudan. We'll also discuss wheat farming in Kenya. And lastly, we will discuss banana growing in Kenya and Uganda. So those are the 6 crops we are going to be discussing. In Kenya, coffee farming in Kenya and Ethiopia, sisal farming in Kenya and Tanzania, sugarcane farming in Kenya and Sudan, wheat farming in Kenya, and lastly, banana growing in Kenya and Uganda. So without wasting time again, let us look at the first crop, which is tea. Now, tea, subtopic, tea farming in Kenya. Tea is one of the major crops grown in Kenya, but it is not the main export crop. Tea is not the main export crop of Kenya. The main export crop of Kenya is tunaita vegetables. Yeah, vegetables, perishable crops. Those are vegetables and flowers. Those are the main export crops from Kenya. Many people think that tea is the major export crop of Kenya. No, in fact, many teachers will tell you that the leading export crop of Kenya is tea, and that one is not true. The main export crop of Kenya is vegetables. The main export crop of Kenya, class 6, is not tea, it is not coffee, it is not wheat, but the main export crop of Kenya is vegetables. Vegetables is the main export crop of Kenya. But tea is one of the major crops grown in Kenya, one of the major cash crops grown in Kenya. So we have other cash crops in Kenya like coffee, we have got wheat, we have got sugarcane, and so many other pyrethrum and so many other crops. But tea is grown in Kenya also. Kenya is the leading producer and exporter. Kenya is the leading producer and exporter of tea in Africa. So the leading producer of tea in Africa and exporter in Africa is Kenya. It is grown on both small scale and large scale. Tea is grown on both small scale and large scale, and it requires a lot of labor. So it is a labor intensive crop. It's a crop that requires a lot of labor. And on those slides, I've attached 2 pictures showing tea plantations. The first picture is one. The first picture yenye nimeweka tick sahi, this one, it shows a tea plantation. Look the way it looks, very beautiful, wonderful. So that is a tea plantation farm in Kericho. And then the second picture, this one, it shows a tea farm together with the farmers there. So they are trying to take care of the crops. I think they are trying to do some pruning, and then after that, harvesting can also start. So if you don't know how tea looks like, that is how tea looks like. It looks like some flowers that we grow in our garden, and I hope you've ever seen them. Kuna flowers zingine zinakuanga green, zinapendwa sana na watu. So tea looks like that. So it is not a crop that grows tall, no. It is just a crop that maintains its height, so they have to prune it to maintain the height. So that's how tea looks like. So they just harvest the leaves. Those leaves are the ones which are taken to the industry for processing so that you can have tea on your table every morning. So the tea that you drink comes from this crop. The tea that you drink comes from this crop. What are the factors favoring growth of tea? What are the factors which favor the growth of tea? For tea to grow plants, what are we supposed to be having? Why is it that tea cannot be grown in Mandera? Why is it that tea cannot be grown in Wajir? Why is it that tea cannot be grown in Marsabit? But it can be grown in Kericho, it can be grown in Muranga, it can be grown in Bureti, it can be grown in Yamira. Why is it that there are specific areas where tea can be grown and some areas where tea cannot be grown? So, the things that we are going to discuss right now are the factors which make tea to grow in certain places and not in other places. And the first factor is the area must be having, and this one is very important, the area must be having deep, black, cotton soil. And the soil must be slightly acidic. And I'm just forgetting something else. The soil must be well drained. So the drainage must be very good. The drainage of the soil must be very good. It should not be a soil that is going to cause flooding during a rainy season. No, it should be soil which is well drained. Drainage should be good so that there's no flooding, because tea does not require flooding during a rainy season. And then cool and wet climate. Tea is a crop that requires cool and wet climate. This climate is very good, and it is mostly found in highlands. And that is why you can now see the towns that I mentioned earlier, Wajir, Garissa, Marsabit, are not towns or areas with cool and wet climate. These are areas with hot and dry climate. And tea cannot do well in hot and dry climate. Tea does well in cool areas, and cool areas are always highlands. So specifically, you can grow tea in a highland area, and the area must be having deep black cotton soil, slightly acidic, which is well drained. The temperatures must be of about 20 degrees. This is cool temperature. Cool temperature of about 20 degrees. So this one is also very vital in terms of tea growing. Rainfall must be high, so high amount of rainfall is required for tea to grow well. And the rainfall must be between 1,250 millimeters, that is per year, to 2,000 millimeters per year. And then we also require high altitude. Of course, you know, the higher you go, the cooler it becomes. So high altitude areas automatically are going to be very cool. So if tea grows in cool areas, so automatically the climate or the altitude must be high. So this is a crop which requires high altitude of about 1,500 meters to 2,500 meters above the sea level. And then it also requires labor. Said that this is a crop which is very labor intensive. So it requires a lot of labor for it to be grown well. Harvesting is not done by machines. Harvesting is done by people. So it is the people that handpick. Look at this crop, and then so that I can explain this point very well. When you look at this crop, the harvesting is done by hand. So the farmers, the people who are hired for harvesting, they go to the farm and handpick it, handpicking. So you need to have many people. If you have a large plantation, you need many people for them to do the handpicking of tea during harvesting. So this is a crop which requires a lot of labor, especially during harvesting season. So those are some of the factors that tea must have for it, that an area must have for tea to be grown. So tea is a highland crop which requires cool and wet climate, temperature of about 20 degrees, high amount of rainfall, high altitude, well-drained deep black cotton soil, and then it requires enough labor for it to grow well. The areas where tea is grown in Kenya include, include Kericho. So these are the areas where tea is grown in Kenya. Number one, we have Kericho, and Kericho is the main area where tea is grown in Kenya. Kericho is the main area where tea is grown in Kenya. Apart from Kericho, we have other areas like Murang'a, Meru, Sotik, Limuru, Bureti, Nandi Hills, and Bomet. So apart from Kericho, these other areas also tea is grown there. So those are the areas where tea is grown in Kenya. And that marks the end of tea. Of course, there is something that I'm forgetting, and thank God I've just remembered it. So we are just going to put it under NB, a point to note. A point to note, tea is a beverage. Tea is a beverage crop. Beverage crop. Class 6, intakana ukuwa unajua meaning ya beverage up to now, because you are taught about different types of crops in science like class 4. Tea is a beverage crop. Beverage means tunakunywa chai. Tea in Kiswahili is chai. Tunakunywa chai. So tea is a beverage crop which people do what? People drink. So that is something that I was almost forgetting, but I remembered it. That marks the end of our lesson today. So next time when we'll be meeting on Friday, we'll be discussing another crop apart from tea. So maybe we'll be discussing coffee growing in Kenya and Ethiopia. Have a good time and make sure that you copy those notes in your book. Have a good time.